Welcome back to the SEN WA studios out here at Optus Stadium. We've got a very special guest for you off the top of the show. He's a person, I think, whose views on footy you will be keen to hear. If you've got any questions to put to him, the Harvey Norman Busselton text line is 0487 736 736, or give us a call on the Barrett and O'Day open line on 13 12 55. Ian Callahan, the WA Football Commission Chairman, or Chair, joins us on the show. Ian, welcome.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Very happy to be here, and it's great to be talking footy so far out from footy season. So,
yep, absolutely.
It's a great time of optimism.
Always good to have footy in the news, Ian. Hey, first question off the top. Why is it necessary to change the name of the WA Football Commission to WA Football?
Maybe I can frame it in a bit of a statement and said, if I was to say to you, we're here from the government and we're here to help, it's a bit like what happens to some sections of the football community when you say you're from the Football Commission. And I think we're really proud of our mantra that football is the game for all. And we really wanted to change our image and our approach to reflect that. And for those that have seen the new logo, we'll see that football for all is really incorporated in it. And it makes us, I think, more accessible to people that are a bit scared by what they see as a regulator rather than an overall governor, facilitator of football in WA.
I saw the word intimidating used in a couple of the articles covering it. I'd never thought of you guys as intimidating, but perhaps other people did find you that.
Yeah. Maybe we're scared of you, Mark.
I don't think so. Tell us about your journey to onto the commission and also the journey to the chair. Why did you take on the role?
Look, I think football is run principally by volunteers, and while the commission has staff, I'm one of those thousands upon thousands of volunteers that see football as really being important in our community. And I started in amateur football, playing and on the boards there. I served on the board of a waffle club. And then it became a natural progression to try and become a commissioner to give back in a different way. It's really hard to get on the commission if you want, because the way the voting structure is, the two West Coast and Fremantle and the waffle clubs and community football all have a vote. So you have to be able to convince all of those people that you've got something to contribute. So I tried once through the early 2000s and didn't make it, and had another go a few years back. But I've had a relationship with community football, waffle football and AFL football, and bring a bit of a view of all of those to my role at the Commission. Being chair, wrong place at the wrong time, I guess. So somebody has to do it, but it's a great role, and I'm enjoying it so far. And everybody wants to chew your ear about something. You
mentioned that it's hard to get on, and it is a complicated, almost convoluted voting process. Is it? Mm-hmm. Do you think it's still relevant or perhaps proper that the AFL clubs have such a big say in the makeup of the WA Football Commission, given that it's almost like they're removed from it to a large degree now and very much under the control of the AFL? I know that the Commission is the owner or the owner of the licences, but it is interesting they have such a big say in an organisation whose major focus is basically the levels below them.
I take that point, but I also think those two AFL clubs are critical to our football system in WA in that they do fund it there in many ways, so along with the state government and members. And so I think they need to have a say in it. It's always a debate that the members all have, Mark. I don't really have a view. It is what it is, and I can't see it actually changing given the way our constitution is structured.
You mentioned your role or your pathway to the commission included a stint on a waffle club board. Who did you support coming through your pathway in footy, Ian?
I grew up in Rivervale and Lathlane, and Lathlane Oval was walking distance. So as a 10-year-old, I was down there as a Demons person from a very young age.
Can you give us an update on how the Demons are going with trying to establish the new facility? It seems to have gone a bit quiet on that front in recent months.
It is. Look, I'm not that close to it, but the last time I had a conversation with their president before Christmas was that the council still has some issues, but the state government is right behind them in supporting them. So I think they're close to coming to fruition with that, but I've heard that before, Mark, so optimistic.
Yeah, fingers crossed. I think the WAFL needs a strong Perth Football Club, and it's been a club that's had its struggles in the last couple of decades, so hopefully that will be an important step forward for them. What are your priorities, do you think, as the chair of WA Footy?
Look, we've got a variety of priorities we've been working on for a while. One of them is our player development and talent program. Another is the sustainability of WAFL and making WAFL a competition that's attractive to fans into the future. The safety of players is an important ongoing matter for football and many sports, in fact. And then we have the challenge of the changing multicultural society we have and participation and making football available. But one of the underlying things with enormous growth in football and women's football is the availability of the facilities to play. The population of Perth 10 years ago was 2.5 million. Now it's 3 million, and in the next 8 years it's forecast to be 3.5 million. So facilities for football are a key factor, and it's not an easy problem. So we have to work very closely with local governments, state governments, federal governments to try and better use the facilities we've got and create new ones in new areas. So it's a pretty long list, Mark. It's a lot of work we've got on our plate.
Given there's a state election coming up and obviously a federal election likely to follow on from that, and given your need to have funding for these facilities, does this mean you have to be friends with both sides of Parliament at the moment?
Look, we are apolitical, and one of the fortunate things is we have many members of Parliament, irrespective of what party they're in, who are great footy fans. So, and they understand the benefits that footy has in the community, and the individuals that come through footy clubs that develop and achieve things that without the benefit of team sports we wouldn't. So we're friends with them all, and I think they work with us very well, irrespective of political persuasions. Beautifully
answered, Ian. You'll do well in this job, I think. The talent development pathway project is a really critical one, I think, going forward. I've talked to a couple of commission members about the inequities in the talent development pathway at the moment, how that feeds into certain WAFL clubs more than others, and obviously the WAFL clubs are an important conduit between community football and AFL footy. What do you try and get out of that, and do you have funding coming to you from the AFL for that?
Well, I might just go back a little bit to something you asked me for, what our priorities, and it relates to the talent piece, and that is football is run largely by volunteers, and we have to work very hard on an ongoing basis to try and make life easier for volunteers, because in an area where regulations keep getting harder, our life gets harder. And so when you look at talent across the state, and when we talk about talent, it's about making every player the best player they can be, not just elite. So for us, we would like to see whether you live in a region or whether you live in Kelmscott or whether you live in Claremont, you get access to programs and opportunities to participate in that pathway through ultimately community clubs or WAFL clubs, and then AFL if you're good enough. And our data shows that that's not happening. If you live in an affluent area, you have a much better opportunity. If you live in the city, you have a much better opportunity. And we saw from the last draft, I think 9 of the 10 kids that got drafted at AFL come from private schools, or from one of them, actually 8 from private schools, one was from the western suburbs. So you see that, and a lot of that's the opportunity to get good coaching and development in your early stages. So this talent development project for us is one about increasing football's availability and access for all, and that if you think about some of the outlying areas, socioeconomic capability can influence how much people can support a sport, and also to access some of the programs. So if you want to participate in state schoolboys, as an example, it costs about $3,000. So you're unlikely to see somebody from an outer suburb in a lower socioeconomic area being able to fund that. So we are trying to increase that opportunity across. From a WAFL perspective, you were going to ask me a question there, Mark?
No, keep going.
From a WAFL perspective, you'll see when we look at the zones for WAFL clubs, we haven't changed those dramatically for years. So they don't necessarily reflect populations as they are now with the numbers. So with an increases of 500,000 people over the last 8 years, that has a significant impact on WAFL zones and opportunities for clubs and for fans to expect some success from their WAFL clubs. So we're really having a look at that now and working out how we might make zones a little more relevant to the current population, and also to share the load between clubs a little better, and to feed into our talent development program in a way that doesn't matter where you live, you'll start to get better opportunities for good coaching and to help you facilitate going through those pathways. So a really critical process for us.
I think also we've seen a decline in Indigenous players coming into the AFL system in recent years. I'd imagine that part of the aims will be to make sure that they're getting good opportunities so that those numbers start to come up again.
It is. And one of the things that blows people away when we tell them is that in West Australia, there are approximately 12% of our registered players in all of our competitions who are Indigenous. Yet we have a national average in our population of only 3%. So we do get a lot of Indigenous players enrolled in our system, but it is about now how we take them and develop them. And you're going to have to develop them in a way that takes the opportunities to them rather than having to get them to come to the city all the time. So it's a big issue, and it's one of the things we're working with the AFL on. They acknowledge it, but they look at West Australia and really they look at the size of West Australia and the logistics, and we try to get them out as often as we can and drive them from one end of the Pilbara to the other and get them to understand it's not quite Victoria, and you can't drive 3 hours and be in the middle of Melbourne for all these people. So it's a work in progress, but we have a player base with which to work with to start with. It's about helping them develop.
One of the things that is a bit of a hobby horse of mine, and I'm pleased to see Slippy from Byford has sent this question in on the Harvey Norman Bustleton text line, so it can be from him and not me. He says, please ask the new head of footy on his stance for a third AFL team in the Southwest. From Slippy from Byford.
Slippy, get your wallet out because somebody's got to pay for it. But, look, the AFL, we've had some discussions with the AFL over the last week, and an extra team beyond Tasmania is not on their short term, even their medium term horizon. They've got a lot of challenges with getting Tassie up, so that's their focus. They will come to a 20th team in due course, and at that point in time, we would need a state government to say that's a desirable thing that we want. And then how do we go about getting that? Because you need a lazy $100 million to set it up, and that's well and truly beyond WA football and its normal resources to do that. So if we did have one, where would it be? Open slather. A lot of talk about Bunbury, and people of the Southwest would have to get behind the games and show lots of support for that if they wanted to have that in the mix. But it's a long way away, so there's plenty of time to work through that issue.
An interesting one, the fact that you've had to penalise 2 WAFL clubs' premiership points in the last 3 seasons and effectively forgive Perth as well this year because obviously the Demons have enough struggles on their hands. It seems to me that these salary cap breaches that you've penalised clubs' premiership points for, they're all on their books, so they're not overt attempts to cheat the system. And it just feels like maybe the WAFL clubs aren't resourced to be able to survive the sort of audits you're doing, and maybe you need to find a better way to police the salary cap than have a situation where you've got clubs starting on -4 or -8 premiership points every year. Is there any thought to changing that system, or do you think it needs to stay in place and clubs just need to get better?
It's a live issue at present, Mark, so we are working through that as part of an overall process to try and simplify WAFL rules and regulations and encourage player movement between clubs a bit easier to make sure we've got the best players possible playing WAFL rather than going back to other levels of football, because we want to maintain it as our premier community football competition. The salary cap is there because the clubs don't trust each other. So we need something to regulate it, and until we get to that point, we're going to have a system of some type. But we are looking to simplify it because it is confusing in different areas, and we need to make it simple that reflects the ability of the clubs to actually manage it. So it's regular feedback I'll get from them about the stress levels and the interpretations, etc., around that. So I would say watch this space over the next 6 months, Mark.
WAFL Grand Final, do we expect it to be at Optus Stadium again this year, or are you looking at maybe taking it to a suburban ground? I see Leederville Oval is looking in very, very good nick at the moment, by the way.
It is looking in very good nick, and I think we're going to be in good shape with the upgrades of Leederville and Joondalup. So I think that's going to stand us in good stead for flexibility in the future. But right now, look, I'm a lover of the community grounds, and I thought the game we had at Leederville 2 or 3 years back was absolutely fabulous. But in reality, there aren't the facilities there to service the crowds. And if we'd had a rainy day, it would have been a disaster. So, and the players are really focused on trying to play at Optus. It's an expensive proposition for us to do that, so we do review it every year. But I think for the time being, you will see it remain at Optus.
Ian, thanks so much for joining us on the show. Congratulations on the new position. I think it's been an appointment that's been very well received across the football landscape, and certainly a person that has an impressive resume in your time on the commission so far. So congratulations, and we look forward to talking to you more as the season goes on.
Anytime. Thanks, Mark.